He's transforming the urban agriculture space through his company Agritecture. Henry Gordon Smith is helping clients like schools and food producers integrate agriculture into city life. He's joining us today to discuss the planetary impact of urban agriculture and how we as consumers can take control over our food sources. This is Advocate Now. Well, Henry, I'm so excited to talk to you about this topic today because you're the founder and the CEO of Agritecture, which helps schools, farms, and even food producers integrate agriculture into cities. To kick things off, tell us, what is urban agriculture?
So urban agriculture is the production and distribution and also the policies that allow us to grow food in and near the city. And a lot of people think of it as something that's quite new, but if you look back, we always built cities where there was food that we needed to survive on. And so now there's sort of a renaissance that's happening to bring agriculture back into the city, whether it's to improve food security, resilience to climate change, improve health and well-being, or even equity.
And it is so wonderful that this is happening. In recent years, more and more cities, as you mentioned, are introducing urban agricultural practices. Why would you say is this so beneficial to the planet?
Well, I think one of the main reasons why we need to have food in the city is for resilience purposes. We can ask the question, how many of us need to understand how to grow food for us to be resilient to shocks in the system? And we can again look at the past. We can look at World War I and World War II, where supply chains of food were reduced. Urban gardens, victory gardens, as they were called, allowed us to adapt. In fact, in World War II, 40% of the fresh fruits and vegetables were grown in victory gardens in the United States. And we saw that trend across the world as people adapted. There's many, many other examples of this, even examples in the pandemic to look recently at what urban agriculture has done to improve resilience. My biggest concern is that when we look to the future, our generation mostly knows how to use our phones. We're really good at that, but we've lost our connection to nature. We've lost our connection to agriculture. So if there was another conflict like that, would we be able to get together, build these gardens, manage them? Certainly not as well as my parents would have been able to do. And so I think there's a value in just having agriculture as part of any city for resilience. But in addition to that, there's so many other benefits, including rooftop farms and soil-based farms that can manage rainwater in storm events, which are happening very frequently, or even help cool the cities in all of this heat that we're facing. On top of that, you actually get to produce the food, create local economies. In some cases, you can bring them into schools to educate youth about nature, about agriculture. So the list really goes on.
And one way that Agritecture transforms small spaces is through vertical farming. So tell us, what is vertical farming and what are some of the benefits of that?
Well, as we've become more urbanized, there's a lot less space around in these big cities and real estate prices have gone crazy. So a certain individuals started to think about, a particular Dr. Dixon de Pommier, who wrote the book, The Vertical Farm. He was my mentor at Columbia University as well. But in this book, he sort of outlines, well, what if we actually put farms into skyscrapers? What if we actually took them vertical and sort of matched what is happening in the cities? And his vision was very bold and utopian, but a lot of people took that and started developing actual farms. So vertical farming typically refers to the cultivation of plants indoors in stacked levels. Now you can do some outdoors, but most of them are happening in warehouses, in basements, and sometimes they're being integrated into buildings. Now you can say, well, how can I grow indoors? Well, there's a method of production called hydroponics, which allows you to grow without soil and create these recirculating systems. And you can also take those systems and put them indoors and power them by LED lights, which create the spectrum that the plants need to grow, replacing the sun. So these systems are quite effective and efficient in producing a lot more per square foot and reducing the resources of water and also eliminating the need for pesticides. Some of the downsides are that takes a lot of energy, a lot of capital costs to build those farms. And because we're replacing the sun, we can't actually grow everything commercially today, but it is advancing very rapidly and a lot of investment has gone into vertical farming in the past 5 years.
Yeah, and for years, there has been this disconnect between the consumer and what they're consuming. You go to a store, you buy a bunch of produce, you have no idea where it's coming from or what types of toxins were involved in growing it. So how would you say that that's harmful not just for the planet, but for us as consumers?
I think it's really hard to appreciate something if you don't understand it, right? It's hard to value all the work that the farmers are doing, all the environmental resources that are being used, and the impacts of that if the farms are so far away from us. So, in a lot of ways, these products that you can start to see on shelves of retailers or at farmers markets that are grown urban, there's a way for you to understand what's happening. You can even visit some of these farms. In New York City, NYC AgTech Week is coming up, and Farm One is a vertical farm that opens up to tours. So you can go and learn about the technology, see how it's grown, meet the farmers, and just really have a new and exciting perspective about the food system where you value it and appreciate it. I think that's something we could all do a lot more of.
And I do think the public is becoming increasingly aware of where their food comes from, what to look for in terms of how the food is grown, the type of soils that are used, making sure there are no toxic chemicals used in the process. But unfortunately, the way a lot of food is grown is making many people sick. So when we do choose to purchase from a store, what should we be looking for?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a lot of concerns with health and well-being related to food. And one of those is just foodborne illnesses like E. coli. And there's some common products like melons and leafy green products, packed salad greens. Those are the top two ways to get foodborne illnesses in the United States. So you want to be extra cautious with those products and make sure that you wash the product consistently. What's great about some of these local and urban farms is because the distance to plate to customer is a lot shorter, there's actually a lot less opportunities for contamination to occur. And some of these farms that are going completely indoors actually mitigate the need for pesticides entirely. And they avoid a lot of the foodborne illness issues as well, which is why this type of agriculture, these greenhouses and vertical farms, are gaining popularity and trying to respond to that. So when you're a consumer, you really want to look, has it been washed before? Even if it's been triple washed, I'd be very cautious with those salad greens. You're looking for products, again, I think that are closer to you. Try to find out where the source was. A lot of these big brands just combine a bunch of leafy greens from Yuma and California and mix it up. You really don't know the source. So if you know that it's coming from one source, that's also a really big benefit. Keep in mind that organic doesn't mean pesticide free. It means that certain toxic chemicals weren't sprayed on it, but that doesn't mean that it's clean. So you also want to make sure that you wash those products. But again, organic typically means that the soil has been more taken care of. But keep in mind, there's a lot of organic product from China. So do you really want to buy a product that's traveling so far? Try to get local, try to support your farms that are local, and try to think about products that don't need to necessarily be washed or you can be more confident that they're clean.
And there has been a lot of talk about potential food shortages. We've seen farms being adversely affected. So would you say that prioritizing urban agriculture is now more important than ever before, not just in cities, but for individuals as well in their homes?
Yeah, it's absolutely my belief and the belief in Agritecture that we need to prioritize urban agriculture at every level, as you described. And it's very simple to think about what's going to happen and how things are going to get worse. We can see from the pandemic, we can see from the war in Ukraine, we can see that there's been a lack of supply of leafy green products to Canada of increased prices. We saw issues with tomatoes in the UK. These are happening all around the world. And these are just like signals to us that our system is fraying at the seams and that there's going to be more shocks in the system, whether it's climate change, whether it's increased demand because population will continue to rise until 2050 before it declines. There are really big challenges that we're going to face in society and especially in agriculture. So we want to create a buffer, right? We want to create something that helps buffer those challenges and makes us more resilient. And it starts with our youth, teaching them how to grow food, how to select seeds, how to manage these systems in schools that are great ways to engage them. At home, no matter what size your farm space is, whether it's a balcony or a garden, you can grow quite a bit of food at home and get the benefits of fresh abundance at home, as well as learning how to take care of yourself and cooking with all that great food and spending time with your family away from your phone. And then, of course, at the policy level, we need to encourage entrepreneurship in cities and create pathways for entrepreneurs to build these farms on rooftops, outside of the city, near the city, to create that local food system that's going to make us more resilient. So absolutely, you need to get involved ASAP.
Yes, Henry, this is such important information. Thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Such a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I'm Sonia Baghdadi. Thanks for watching and advocating. For more stories and content like this, visit advocate.com and advocatechannel.com.